And I do it over to the PDF so that it will. Let me just see.
Oh, yeah, you can power off there.
I think so.
That's the volume. Is it down on this side?
What I'm looking for.
Like on this edge or no? Your power button? Mike, yours is slightly different than mine.
Yeah. Just trying to see. I can't get rid of that stupid link. Okay, let me try this.
I mean, you can always just use mine if it doesn't work. It's just I don't have highlighted spots like you do. You're very on
Oh,
top
that's
of it.
because I do it too. I put it over to PDF.
That's
Yeah,
smart.
yeah.
I know I said that last time. I was like, oh, I should start highlighting.
Now so it's not coming up.
You still got 2 minutes.
And I still got it. I got a lot of notes here too that I ran over. So
Adjourn. Good.
will you say our opening prayer? Sure. Okay, and Steve, will you do the pledge? Okay.
Really nice. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, that, it locks it up like that, you know?
I know when you can close the app sometimes. I'm
It
not
makes
sure
me
how to
so
close the
mad.
apps, for sure.
Yeah. Ready? And there's Mike too, so we got all 7 of us, that's a good thing. There's Mike.
Oh, yeah, we're all here. We're all early.
Hmm?
That's early.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
Summer's over, maybe it'll be.
Are you ready? I'd like to welcome you to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. This is Planning Commission meeting for September 12th, 2023. This meeting is being recorded. And we're going to begin our meeting this evening with an opening prayer by Commissioner Thompson and then a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Johnson.
Our Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee this beautiful day, we're grateful for our many blessings. We're thankful for the opportunity we have to come together as a planning commission and members of the community. We ask that Thy Spirit may be with us, that we may make choices that are consistent and wise for the city. We ask special blessing now as the election season approaches. We ask that the residents may feel a renewed determination to be involved in the election process and to let their voices be heard. We're grateful for all that we have. We're grateful for this great country and for all those who serve and protect us, our military, law enforcement, first responders. We ask a special blessing on them that you may continue to protect them from harm as they strive to make our country as great as it is. And we say these things now in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is audible roll call of commissioners. Sharon Call, here. Mike Marchbanks.
Here.
Jared Showers.
Here.
Rob Callis.
Here.
Stephen Johnson.
Here.
And Karen Danielson. Here. And Scott Thompson.
Here.
Okay. The next item on our agenda, this would be the approval of the minutes. This is from August 22nd, 2023. And commissioners have received the minutes ahead of time and had a chance to review those. Do I have any corrections or additions to the minutes? I thought they looked really good, and there was a lot to get included.
I wasn't here, so I thought they looked excellent. Thank you for all your hard work as I read them.
Anyone else have anything? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, the next item on our agenda, this is a time for public comment. This would be for any items not already on the agenda for this evening. Anyone here for that purpose? Okay. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing, because it is an ordinance amendment proposal. And do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing, yes.
Okay. A motion, do I have a second?
A second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And this is item number 4. It's an ordinance amendment, 1744, R1-12, with a setback amendment. And our applicant is John Bodine. Yeah, and if you and your wife would like to come out in front, that would be great. And it's Sarah, right?
It is, Sarah.
Okay. And our presenting staff is Michael Florence, and I'll turn the time to you.
All right.
And there should be a place for you to sign in. Is there you can both sign in there?
Great. Well, thank you, commissioners. It's great to be here with all of you. We've got a full quorum or full planning
Yeah.
commission, so it's great to be here with you. So this evening, the Bodines have made an application to amend the side yard setbacks, the corner side yard street setback in our city code. Lindon city ordinances require a 30-foot front setback and a 30-foot street corner setback. Corner yards are kind of unique. They also require a 30-foot rear yard setback. They live here at 44 North, 1200 East. This neighborhood is a little unique. Let me zoom in. This is their property here on the corner. Most properties in Lindon don't have a park strip, and this neighborhood does. You can see along 50 North there, also 1200 East, just the way that was developed in this neighborhood. And I'll point to that here in a few minutes again. So what the Bodines are asking for is on the street corner setback is to reduce that setback from 30 feet to 25 feet. This all came about because the Bodines have filed a building permit application back in December of last year. The city approved that in January to put a garage on that north side of their home. And so if you go back to here's 50 North here, 1200 East down here at the bottom. So this is the site plan the city stamped. It shows a 30-foot, 11-inch setback from the property line. So we approved that. They obtained their building permit in January. In February, the building inspector went out to do an inspection and found that the footing was only about 17 feet? About 17 feet from the property line. And so everything kind of came to a halt at that point. We reached out to the Bodines and I've had many discussions since that time. We've discussed, the Bodines had a survey done. We discussed would it be possible to move the property line out to the curb, like many other properties in Lindon. The problem with that then is it reduces the city's 50-foot right-of-way along the street, so we couldn't do that. We talked about a variance. Could a variance be applied for? And under state law, a variance can't be self-imposed, and so that we ran into that obstacle as well. And so really the option came down to if they wanted to continue to do the garage, they could shrink the size of the garage, which they're proposing to do, and then petition the Planning Commission and City Council for an ordinance amendment. I provided in your staff report, actually, let me go back to this one. So early on, Mary, she overlaid the home onto the overlaid the site plan and home onto the county parcel map. So we're not sure where the architect came up where he located the property line. If you look at this map, he located the property line for some reason out into the street, because that's where the 30-foot setback would have shown overlaid onto the site plan and aerial photo. And so that shows the 17 feet from the true property line to the garage. And so I went through each property in Lindon that is on a corner lot, highlighted those in your staff report. In the R112 zone, so that's what this application would apply for, is that this would only apply for the setback reduction in the R112 zone, so properties above Murdoch Canal.
The third acre lots.
Yes. And so there's 171 lots, corner lots in the R112 zone. There's 4 remaining corner lots that could still be developed that this would apply to. Plus it would apply to anyone that, may be able to still do an addition on their corner side yard. So the amendment would just follow the similar wording. It would just say on corner lots in the R112 zone, the side yard contiguous to the street shall not be less than 25 feet and shall not be used for vehicle parking except such portion as devoted to driveway use for access to a garage or carport. Of the remaining rear and side yards on a corner lot, 1 rear yard setback of 30 feet and 1 side yard setback of 10 feet shall be required on the remaining non-street facing sides of the lot. So this copies exactly the original language, except it reduces it in the R112 zone from 30 to 25. And so, this is really a legislative act. You'll be making a recommendation to the city council and whether or not we want to change this ordinance.
A question. So you're telling me that we can't give a variance for one property, we have to change the whole ordinance?
That's correct. Yeah.
Where does it, who dictates that?
Well, so the state law has 5 variance requirements, and you have to meet all 5 of those. If you can't meet them, then you don't qualify for a variance. So this is self-imposed. The site plan was incorrect. The garage was built to an incorrect site plan. They imposed that on themselves. The city couldn't grant a variance in this situation.
Because it was already started.
Yes.
If it was at 25, we maybe could have.
No,
Probably not.
because that would be a non-conforming setback, and you can't expand a
Why would
non-conforming.
we have to change the whole city ordinance for one house?
Well, it's just that zone. It's just the R112 zone.
Right, but
And-
the whole city R1, zone.
But just, I for 30 years built homes and
I'm
this
not
size,
saying, yeah,
and it's usually 30 and 20,
yeah.
not 30 and 25 even. So to
Yeah.
me,
I'm
This-
not saying it's a bad thing,
Yeah.
it's just, it's the logistics of it, I'm wondering.
And I guess that's my question is why wouldn't we be considering, you know, the R120 zone also while we're looking at this? Maybe this is a little bit,
30 and 30 is pretty abusive.
It is.
you know, a little bit touchy to me because when we built our home,
Around the corner.
the same thing, the footings were gonna be poured, the cement truck was there. We get a call from the builder saying, you've got a half an hour to take 4 feet out of your house or we're dumping the cement on the ground. Because someone had measured wrong, right, and they were there, and so we have 30 and 30 because we're on a corner lot, and to this day, we don't have a window that's centered because in our rush to cut 4 feet out of our house at that time, the plans didn't get redrawn, and that's always a sore spot, and so I've always thought that 30 feet is a little
You know,
abusive or hard to, so,
I've heard it 30 and 20.
but that's what I said.
Yeah.
That's usually what it is. But in those cases where it's 30 and 20, you can call your side your front and your front your side. That's also goes that way to
Or you
where
can flip it.
you can take the front of your house and be 20 feet off the street. And then off the other side, you gotta be 30. You gotta be 30 or 20, but it doesn't matter where it is. So this has always been odd
Yes,
for me.
Me too. So let's say we change it to 20, or 25, or whatever we change.
You know, where that's,
And then
where
the next
that's,
guy comes in and he says, I'm 2 feet short of that.
That's why these are legislative decisions. You don't have to make the change. It's a legislative act. This is where you're putting on a different hat than your normal administrative with site plan and conditional use permit approvals.
Didn't we have something already come before us, maybe 2 years back, about encroaching into the side yard setback on an R120 on a corner for like a deck or something? Refresh my memory what that was about. Remember?
yeah, it might have been.
We did, right when I started, we did do an ordinance amendment. There was a deck, and the deck didn't meet the requirements of the code when it was constructed. They tore it down, they applied for a building permit, and the planner at that time said, no, you gotta bring it into compliance. And so we went through this same process, evaluating a deck on a corner lot and the encroachment, and we changed the ordinance
To allow the encroachment for a
to
deck.
allow the encroachment of a deck into that 30-foot side yard.
So of these 171 lots that are on a corner, do they all have park strips?
No, they don't.
Because that also, I think, makes a difference. I mean,
Yeah,
if
it
you've
does.
got that extra buffer with the park strip, maybe the ordinance could have some wording, if there's a park strip, the setback could be 25 feet or something.
You know what, I'd be willing personally, and again, this may be totally different than everybody else, I'd be willing to go 30 and 20 if there's a park strip.
I am too.
And if there's not a park strip, then 30 and 25. Just because there's so many homes that are already built in that zone up there, that, you know, maybe we shouldn't ratchet the whole thing back to 30 and 20, even though I wouldn't have a problem with that. To me, the park strip makes a huge difference too, you know, to where at least, you know, I would go 30 and 20 all day long with the park strip, but.
And the park strip
Yeah.
on that side is 9 feet, where the standard is 6 feet. So it's even
Yeah, it feels huge
even a
up
little
there,
larger
yeah.
than the normal.
But my only concern is just where we're measuring, you know, like, we'd have to get a little bit more specific in the ordinance. Just saying,
Not equate it to a park strip or not, or just pull it always off property line? What's your thought
or
there?
If the park strip is over 6 feet,
there's a lot of variables that I haven't studied for this.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I would want to look at that a little closer and
You know, though, if Bodine's could be a little bit patient for us to explore that, and if they haven't built already, maybe they'd go ahead and go a little bit bigger if they really had 20 feet. If we, you know, maybe they could just, sounds like they've been waiting since February, but, and what's a few more weeks if we wanted to explore that.
yeah,
What
this
would
is their application, and so
Oh, I see.
this is not a
And
city.
it's not a
initiative.
city initiated.
No, this is their
okay, yeah.
application.
So it'd be totally up to them.
So could we today do it, like, I like the idea of attaching, if there's a park strip attached, then 25 feet is,
20.
at-
20.
well, in this situation, 25, they've already done their plans for 25, right?
Yeah, but the ordinance.
No, but
would
they
say
haven't
20.
built yet, and I think they'd probably prefer to have 20 if they could.
We went back and forth on the email. We said, we'd love 20, we'll take 25. That was the recommendation to submit
Yeah.
it at 25, but
But since we're maybe fixing something that's a little awkward anyway, anyway,
Why are you so set on
just because it's
20 though?
normal. It's
What
what
do you
the,
mean normal?
it's the
Where-
standard in the state of Utah, 30 and 20.
30 and 20?
Yeah,
It's
for a
odd,
10,000 square foot lot.
yeah, it's odd to have 30 and 30, and,
That's very odd.
yeah,
Let
and
me pull up some information real quick that Mary
We're
put
building
together.
bigger homes today,
Well, that's true.
you know.
Yeah, on smaller lots.
Yeah, if we're out of sync with the rest of the state, then maybe so,
Where are
especially.
you on your construction? Where are you on your construction? Are you held up?
we had, on that first approval, we pretty much started. We tore up our shed that was there, all of the driveway on that side. They started to dig.
Would you have to hold up your construction a week or two?
We would be more than happy.
Yeah.
You would do that.
And what would that 5 feet do for you? Just give you additional depth in the garage?
Yeah,
Yes.
25 feet, it would be 14.6 from our house, which is an 8, maybe a 10-foot door. We'd probably only go another couple of feet, so we could get a 12-foot door, because we're swinging into the north, so, you know, it would, yeah.
It'd definitely be worth the wait.
Yeah.
It looked like you were putting in a basement apartment, no, I just saw a lot of digging on that side. You're just doing some remodeling, okay. I have another question as far as, I mean, this whole problem seems to come from the architect not measuring, or not giving adequate site plans to the city. Have you approached him on that, or what is his response to that?
And this is
Because,
somebody, the contractor and the surveyor that put the plans together, somebody who's worked with Lindon City. So when we got the plans and submitted the application, we didn't really take out our measuring tape and, you know, see was it, you know, where was he measuring from? So that was the first plan that Mike was referring to that got submitted and approved. We started the construction at that approval. And then when we found out, okay, wait, you guys didn't measure right, we went back, all right, where is the property line? Let's make sure we get this right. Gary, who had done the inspection, came out and said, okay, here's a stake. If you guys can measure from this stake, then we know it's within, you know, the boundaries. So we did that, measured from the stake. We moved over the footings, you know, got ready to pour again, dug everything
Resubmitted
out again.
plans.
Resubmitted plans again, another $3,500 application fee a second time. And then, you know, we got going 2 more weeks in the construction to be, you know, halted again, that stake wasn't in the right place, so. The third time, and then Mike and Mary were great to come out, because we were just kind of saying, where do we measure from? Are we on the right side? Let's make
Right.
sure that we know what to tell the surveyor. So they came out, we literally stepped it off right on that side yard and measured from there, and that's what the third plans are submitted about.
okay.
It's
Yes,
odd
that's-
because you're in a developed area. You're not on an undeveloped street with no sidewalk,
Yeah.
curb and gutter.
That's an
Somebody's made a
expensive
mistake.
mistake for the,
Well,
For your
yeah,
architect to
yeah, it's
make.
hard to just, to understand how that mistake was made.
right.
But it could have been made simply because, again, surveyors are so used to that 30 and 20. He maybe wasn't thinking 30 at all anyway. Maybe he was thinking 20 because
But it
that,
didn't even fit
No,
20
yeah.
though. That's where the
No,
problem
it
is.
would
didn't
fit
even
20.
that. No, because it was 17.
oh, they were only
Mm-hmm.
17. Oh, how you originally drew the plan. So you'd still be shrinking what you wanted to do a little bit. Yeah, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how you make that mistake.
yeah, but I know, like, in our case, you know, the city approved the plans, but we're just relying on someone else's measurements, right? They didn't measure until right before the footings were poured on, in my case. And I'm sure that's the same with yours, right? That's when they inspect it. And so there isn't anything, at least I'm aware of, in the approval process where they make sure that those drawings are accurate or to scale or whatever.
They've got
you
to
know.
trust the architect.
They
and
trust the architect or the builder
Right.
in that sense. So, yeah, if that mistake's made at that point, then,
So Mike, did you have some
Yeah, I can
questions?
run through. Mary did a great job putting these together. So it really depends on, in some of these cities, which zone you're in. Looks like Vineyard does have a 30 on their side yard. Highland has 30 feet. And this, again, this is on the street side yard. American Fork is 20. Lehigh is 20. Payson is 20, let's see, 20. Saratoga Springs is 20. South Salt Lake's 12. They have a lot smaller lots. Orem is 20. Pleasant Grove is 25.
It really is.
So 20 to 25
Yeah.
is the norm. Looks
So-
like it. I mean, Highland Vineyard, a couple of these are 30 like Lindon.
I'm surprised Vineyard is.
I am too, but-
That almost doesn't make sense to me, but anyway.
Yeah, as
But
tight as they pack 'em in.
Highland, was traditionally a half-acre zone
Right.
city and did backwards things too.
So the reason why staff went 25, because we didn't know where you're gonna end up on this. And so
Yeah.
that's where we went is 25, being a little bit more conservative.
Well,
Maybe we tie the 20 to something less than an R20,
yeah,
2,000 square foot lot.
well, we
20,000
are
square
anyway,
foot.
because it's strictly for the R12 zone.
Yeah, so
The
the other
propo-
would remain 30?
Yeah,
R120 as it's
we'd have to
proposed.
deal with that,
if
and
you-
I'd be willing to deal with
That's-
that, but we don't need to
yeah.
deal with that now.
That's not their
No.
application, so.
If you did, we would just need to renotice that.
Yeah,
Okay, Mike, do you have any additional comments then?
What,
Okay.
Mike, what's your, what was, do you think was the original concept here? Is this, because they were trying to avoid side obstructions on corners or? And so with that, I see in your, in the proposed, it says, shall not be used for vehicle parking, except as a portion is devoted to the driveway use. So can they park on the driveway, or do they have to be in the garage?
No, they can park on the driveway. I think that's for those side entrance
Okay.
type on a corner. Yeah, we just copied what was in the existing code and just put 25 for the R112 zone.
If, they wouldn't have to reapply again, would they, if we delayed it?
No,
if we recommended to the city council 30 and 20, and
You could move
that's
that-
not their application, that wouldn't delay them if that was the recommendation we threw to the city council that we.
yeah, you could just make a recommendation to the city council that you recommend that it be 20, and we can move this on to city council next week.
Yep.
Do we need to put any,
You run the risk of them not going along with it, but, I mean, I would hope they would look at our strong,
The only thing you want to
They
look
do.
at is
They do.
your driveway width. Does 20 feet give someone enough room to park
that's what, that was
without
my
overhanging
question.
the sidewalk? And so that's, if you're driving a 4-door long bed, I mean, you're butting up against that 20 feet, and so I think that's the thing is here.
pull their plat up again,
So
because they're not,
this is the one,
their driveway's still going out to they got an extra long, the
They-
driveway's not going out to the short side, is it?
it's not, and they'll still have,
But somebody's could.
Somebody's could, yeah, but theirs definitely, they're gonna end up with a very long driveway there.
yeah, they already have a long driveway. This is because they're turning in at an angle into their garage.
Right.
That's the only negative is
Yeah.
if you had a big, long truck and.
Yeah, and so we would
And
need
we're
to
not-
address that.
Yeah, and we're not adjusting.
Scott's
it
getting
or
us the measurements on it.
Creating an ordinance just for this property. We're
No,
creating
for
it
the whole
all-
R12
The whole
zone.
R12
Yeah.
zone, so.
22 feet. A truck with bolt, if it's a crew cab long bed, it's around 22 feet. An extended bit width, that's with a long box, that, like what I pull my fifth wheel with.
Okay, what I'd like to do is see if the Bodines have anything additional information they'd like to give to us.
No, we're
Okay.
just grateful that we got on the agenda. They've been great in helping us kind of figure out what options we have.
Okay,
We've been in Lindon for almost 30 years, so we love it here. And
22 feet.
well, you're doing some fun things there. Well, what I'd like to do, since this is a public, go ahead, Mike, did you have additional?
I think Scott did.
So that 22 feet for the driveway, that we're saying that we need to, in order for that to be there, we would need a minimum of 20, 22. That's why I guess that's where the 25's coming from
Yeah,
in a lot of places.
and do you know what, even in the
Yeah,
R,
where's that 22 come from? And so it's in that situation, if it's 22 feet, but yet there's a park strip that's 6 feet wide or 9 feet wide, then is it causing the side obstruction if it's up
Well-
there? But they don't want parking out onto the
What you
city
don't
property.
want is you don't want a truck on the sidewalk so people can't walk the
Walk
sidewalk.
past it, yeah, and so that's where the 22 feet.
So I think it's more like if you're looking at this home, for example, you know, you'd want to make sure that the setback is enough that you're not gonna have a vehicle overhanging the sidewalk. Because, you know, this is the front of the home here where there's the entrance and the sidewalk. This is the corner side yard entrance to the garage. You just want to make sure that you've got enough room. We can measure this one, for example, it's
well,
you know,
even in
this
the
one's
R,
20, this one's 29, 30 feet.
Yeah.
even in the R12 zone, still, those lots are still, a lot bigger than most cities' lots are.
Oh, yeah, most cities are quarter, they're third.
Right, right. So these lots are still a lot bigger, so I don't know, anyway, we'll have that discussion. Since this is a public hearing, is there anyone else, we do need to allow comments from the public that would like to make comment? Okay. Why don't we close the public hearing and then bring it back up to the commission for a
I'll make a
discussion?
motion, we close.
I second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay? And so we just need to have the discussion amongst the commission to me, it sounds like that you are amenable to decreasing that side yard lot, the lot size. I think the question is whether we go with 20 or 25.
And the question, I think what happens is this is unique because this is a garage. Not all applications that come to us is gonna be a garage. Where we could
Right.
say 20 feet, but they wanna do an addition. And, an
Right.
addition on the side yard, that's not gonna give us the driveway issue that we're dealing with. But a side yard driveway, when they're trying to go close.
You know
With the
what, though,
driveway.
it's more typical, Scott, that people choose a corner lot so they can side load a
True.
garage, so the front of their house has another window or two and doesn't look like it's got a garage on the front side of the house. So it's pretty common, if somebody's gonna go for a corner lot, I'd say more than 50% of the time they'll side load the garage just to get that look of a bigger home.
Or an RV or anything.
Yeah,
That's why they buy that lot.
yeah,
'cause
that's.
it gives them that
yeah,
access.
That's why they buy that in many cases, or especially did from me when I was doing 10 and 12,000 square foot lots with $1 million homes on them 25 years ago.
And if we put it at 23 feet, people look at us like, where'd they get 23
I don't
feet
think
from?
we need to do that. Okay, this is kind of my thought that all the other lots in this area have required the 30-30. If we reduce that, my thoughts are that we should stay with the 25, just because of the lots in Lindon and because all the other lots in the R12 zone have required that 30-30. That's my thoughts.
And Mike has done research to back up the 25, not the 20. You haven't went back and looked at how 20 would impact, or is there any other perceived impacts if we went to 20?
No, I haven't looked at that. I think what I'd want to research is the discussion about the park strip. I don't have have any comments on the 20-foot setback.
And of course, this is gonna go to city council. And, you know, if they wanted to reduce that additionally, they could, but, I guess that's my thoughts, is where everyone else in the area has been required to do the 30-30. We reduce that, even though many other cities, you know, do have a reduced side yard setback.
And one option I was just thinking of as you said that, Commissioner, is you could make the recommendation of 25 to the council with staff to research and provide the city council information on a 20-foot setback.
That's
if you-
great.
If you'd like.
Negative impacts on a 20-foot setback.
Yeah,
Any negative impacts, because I think we'd want to be careful not to pass an ordinance, and, oh, we did this, and then some kid hits that 2 feet sticking out into the sidewalk on his bicycle.
You know what?
You know, and then we're going,
Maybe
we approved that.
that would be simple to rectify if it were my subdivision and people wanted to do a 30-20. I'd say if you're gonna side load your garage, that has to be the 30-foot setback on the garage side. The front of your house will then be 20 foot off, be the 20-foot setback. The garage side will be the 30-foot setback to not have any.
I kinda hate to see a front of a house only 20.
20 feet's too close.
You know what, you never know after landscape goes in and everything else, and that's how, there's more built that way than there are the
I
way
think
we're
it'd be
talking.
easier to say, if they're gonna side load 25 feet, if they're going.
Oh, there, and you could do that.
If
too.
they're not gonna side load 20 feet.
20
There,
feet.
you know
I
what, I like that even better, Rob,
I like that.
I like that.
To say what?
If they're gonna side load a garage, 25 feet
Minimum.
minimum. If they're not going to side load with the garage, just have it as a part of their house, 20 feet.
but what does that do
Well,
for
that
our
puts the-
applicant?
That gives them what they came here today for, the 25 feet.
Cause they're not side loading, I mean, they're not, yeah, it would.
That gives them what they're asking
Yeah.
for tonight, but they're not gonna increase that, get that other 5 feet because of the side load issue.
But what if we did, you know, as the motion, you know, as a recommendation, and what the applicant's asking for, of the 25 feet, and then, as Mike suggested, that staff would research the 20-foot side yard setback prior to the city council meeting, and would have research available for them.
I think that's great, because
Now that I opened my mouth, I have to do that before tomorrow morning, because the staff report is
Really
due
sorry,
to
you're
go
the one
to go to city
suggested-
council
The problem
tomorrow.
with the 20-foot side, if you've got a garage, is you're gonna have the potential of a vehicle over
That's
the
right.
sidewalk.
That's
And,
right.
and literally, that's, if it's only 22 feet, that's literally, that car is literally to park, have to
And
butt
that's
up
why I'm
against the
saying,
garage.
if we go with the 25, and that's what the applicant's asked for, and then Mike provides additional research to the city council, and then if they want to amend that, they can.
Or at least discussion.
Yeah,
I may just put a comment in the staff reports that, about our discussion tonight, and then today I'll provide
don't include
information
it in-
at the meeting.
So
Don't
you have
include it in
some
the
time.
motion.
So you can sleep tonight.
Yeah.
So don't include it in the motion, just let you,
No, I would include it. I think that's
Okay,
good.
okay. I don't know how you feel about that. Jared, we haven't heard anything from you. Hardly. Not much.
I'm okay with passing it on as 25 foot. The 20 feet, I think that's getting a little short.
Right.
well, it is if it's the driveway side, but, yeah.
yep,
Are we ready for a motion?
that's where I said too. So the motion is the same as what you proposed here.
Right.
For recommendation, and then for city staff to provide the council information on a 20-foot setback.
Side yard setback. And after,
Or we could just change that third bullet point to be contiguous to a street from 30 to 25 and 20 if it is not a side load garage. Would that
Well,
work?
Yeah, you could just make that recommendation and then I can provide that to
A
the council.
recommendation, right.
And
And then, they may
It's up to you.
take that out.
I would like to just recommend it as applied for tonight with that condition that staff is going to provide
Yeah.
additional research.
Because if the council knows that, all we really want is the council to know that we are amenable to a 20-foot setback as long as it's not a side-loaded garage. You know, that's really what we
Okay.
want. That's, so we just,
All right, you want me to make the motion?
Yeah.
I move to recommend to city council approval of ordinance 2023-18-0 as presented, and as listed in the overview.
And then do you want to put anything
Suggesting-
on there with
Well,
staff?
just suggesting to staff to discuss the 20-foot that we discussed here in planning commission meeting.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Voting is unanimous. And now
sorry
you
they
can
make
see
such
what-
big cars.
Now you can see what city council's decision on that is.
When's
So,
that meeting?
That'll be next Monday.
Monday, yeah.
It starts at 5:15, but I'm not sure what time. I'll send you the agenda. Let's walk out over.
Okay, thank you.
Buy a sure bed. I use it for the business as a long bed. It's so tight.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is also a public hearing. And so I do need a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll s-
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, and this is a public hearing for a zoning map amendment at 183 North State Street. And our applicant is Avalon Senior Living. Is that you, sir? Yes. Okay, if you'd like to come up. Are you both involved in that? Okay,
Curtis Meyer, the architect,
okay,
and I'm Craig Nielsen.
okay, all right. Okay, and our presenting staff on this is Mary Barnes. And we'll let you go ahead.
Commissioner Cole. So this item is regarding a zone map amendment at 183 North State Street, specifically to add the senior housing facility overlay to the property. And I'm definitely going to be talking about the proposed building and everything, but it is important to remember that this is specifically for a recommendation to the City Council on the actual zone change. You won't be approving anything to do with the building tonight. So the applicant owns the existing, I'll just pull up the concept plan. The applicant owns the existing Avalon Apartments to the south of the subject property. That's a 90 units total, 45 units each. And he's wanting to add on to the property, add 183 North State Street to the overall Avalon project. And then to be able to do that, to build senior living there, he's going to have a zone change to that senior housing facility overlay. Chapter 1775-20 of the Lindon City Code states that any application to amend the overlay area must include a concept plan and preliminary renderings of the proposed building. If the project changed significantly beyond the concept plan after zone change is approved, the Planning Commission has the authority to refuse to grant the conditional use permit. Therefore, I added a quick little analysis of the concept site plan and the renderings in your staff report. I'll go to that real quick. This table. Currently, the proposed building and site would meet the acreage, setback, fencing, parking, density, height, and dwelling unit size requirements. The applicant did reach out to me yesterday to state that the dwelling unit size would likely be closer to 700 square feet instead of the 800 square feet shown on the concept plan. But 700 square feet is the required amount, so he would still be meeting the code. But
Size of each unit?
each unit has to be at least 700 square feet. Currently, it shows an 800 square foot dwelling unit in the concept plan, but I'm just letting you know now because of that requirement of the concept plan being fairly close to what the site plan will be. The landscaping will meet the requirements pending a full landscaping plan, and then the architectural design would match the existing Avalon buildings as shown here. Of course, the difference here would be there wouldn't be a fourth floor. That's also pending final review as well. Yeah?
What's pending final review?
So what I'm saying is that this is a zone change. If this is approved, they're gonna have to come back for a conditional use permit and site plan approval with you guys. But this zone change is gonna go through the city council. However, in the senior housing facility overlay code, it says that when someone applies for a senior housing facility overlay zone change, they have to provide a concept plan that's as close as possible as to what is actually going to be.
Okay, so this is
On the
this
ground.
is showing a 4-bedroom. What they're proposing a 3. I mean, a 4-story, and they're
Yeah.
proposing a 3. Okay.
So what this is showing is that these are the existing Avalon apartments. If this zone change is approved, and if they come back for a site plan and conditional use permit approval with you guys, this is exactly what the proposed building would look like, except it's going to be 3 stories. The existing Avalon apartments are 4-story buildings. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so the general plan, I'll just come back to this. The general plan does mention the importance of having housing options for Lindon residents with different life cycle needs, where it is compatible and as long as there are buffers. So the Heritage Trail does provide a buffer around the building. I'll zoom in a little. So here is that trail coming around here. There'll be a 7-foot required site obscuring fence as well that would help, shield potential residents on this property from the surrounding office buildings. And then with this single-family home, the closest single-family home, this existing Avalon building would mostly block that view of the new building. So there are some buffers in the area. This project could also help to meet some implementation measures that can be found in the general plan, including preserving existing neighborhoods and establishing new ones that are aligned with the existing patterns, and then continuing to evaluate areas for mixed-density residential. However, according to a survey in the general plan, only 9% of survey respondents would support more senior housing options in the city. So there's some conflict there within the general plan and senior housing. Staff has received many inquiries here. I'm going to pull up a Google Map view of this property. So staff has received many inquiries over the past 2 years about this property from different commercial, developers. Most of those have gone nowhere. I don't know if you remember, but there was an ordinance amendment once last year for indoor sand volleyball, and it wasn't approved because he didn't show up. But the issue that we've kind of seen as people have come through DRC to look at this property to develop it for, a commercial strip mall or a restaurant or something, they've said that this is going to be difficult because of the power poles on the property, the easements on the sides, which I can show you, the setback from that residential, the Avalon residential, and then also the slope of the property. I don't have the exact slope, what that is, but as you can see, it starts here on State Street and it comes all the way down to this, the parking lot area, basically down here. Many developers have mentioned that something that's really important to them is a line of sight from State Street. They don't want to be building down in a hole. Oz Development, who is developing this corner lot on 200 North and State Street or Lakeview, they are building in a hole, and that's working for them because they can access through the Premier Family Medical parking lot. If you remember, they don't have any accesses to State Street, and they also don't have any kind of retail uses. It's an office building. Whereas this, it's boxed in by Avalon Apartments to the south. Here we are. Avalon Apartments to the south, and then the Lindon Heritage Trail. The only way for an independent development to work would be an access from State Street and then taking in, all the fill that would have to come in to raise a building up to State Street level. I mean, certainly could be done. I'm just letting you know what we've heard through the different DRCs, the different phone calls that we've had. Many people. A lot of people have also asked, for this property for maybe something a little bit more unsavory, which isn't, like, these things aren't permitted, but people have told me that the only thing that could work here is a storage yard, a dealership, vault storage, that kind of thing, stuff that doesn't need to have a frontage on State Street. And obviously we've said no to all of those requests, but it's just something to keep in mind that we have, as staff, we have seen that this property doesn't seem to immediately lend itself to a commercial use. Again, could certainly happen at some point. We saw that with the Fizz building to the south here. They put in tons of fill in the back. It took a while for that property to develop, and it may take a while for this property to develop. However, this proposed development would have an access from Avalon and an access to State Street. The building wouldn't need that State Street frontage as much because it's residential apartments. It would provide more community for the overall Avalon, project as well, more people. And then, let me think. So really, I think the question here tonight is, this is a legislative action. You'll be recommending approval for this zone change to the City Council. But this zone change just needs to be really carefully evaluated. What is the best use for this property? Is it this application where you're adding residents to an area where there are already the same type of residents? You're essentially increasing the community, increasing the neighborhood there, establishing a land use that is existing already just to the south? Or are you thinking that the best use is going to be holding out for a commercial use there at some point, someday? And then will increasing the amount of senior housing in the city meet the goals of the general plan? And do you have anything to add to that? Any of you?
Yeah, Mary, great job. And the biggest issue and the reason I'm even looking at this wasn't so much that I wanted, I talked to some associates and I said, well, we have to have an overlay and this is what we all have to do. And they said, well, why do that? Let's just go somewhere else and build this, because that would be easy enough. The real reason for this is for the existing tenants, citizens of Lindon, and they're trying to maintain their views from their existing units in Building 1. The idea of a restaurant there, which was what I originally heard, that was a horrendous thought for me, that they're going to be out looking at the back of a restaurant, what the garbage looks like back there and how things end up back there. And so the more as I came by several times, Mary would tell me, yeah, this person's come in and that, and every time I'm thinking, I need to preserve the existing property for the benefit of the tenants, for the benefit of those people that are already living there. That is the biggest reason for wanting to put it right here. The second reason is because there is some synergy and some benefits from us utilizing our existing management. We have full-time management there, and that this would be an easy addition for us to continue to be able to handle And not only is it the view, though, there is also a sense of community that is, that if you go and walk around Avalon and visit with the tenants, you'll be surprised at the community that they have, and for example, the outside garden spaces that are included both on building 1 and 2, 100% full. And then and as I walk through checking the landscaping, I've got some lady in the 3rd level talking to the person that's gardening down on the ground, just, enjoying the community that they have, being 55 and older. It takes us longer to lease it up because we have less potential tenants. But the benefit of that is that they take care of the place. They're much more conscientious about the community, about who they live with and who they're around. And so I am wanting to contribute to their benefit by going ahead and adding this. And then to the fact that Oz is building next door, and the way that laid out, obviously they're well on their way. That worked out, in my opinion, to be the best it could possibly be for this, because they're, as she said, in a bit of a hole, and again, an office use, that's going to be professional and look good, and it will not be a distraction to my tenants at all, I don't believe. And so it just seems to me that for the benefit of city, and for the city, and for the benefits of, most importantly, for the benefit of my tenants, this was clearly the best use, because I could certainly build this somewhere else and I'm not even really interested in that. I'm most interested in preserving what we already have and making it work.
So that'd add 30 doors.
30 units in 1 acre, right?
Correct.
1 acre, so
How
you'd have
many
30
acres
to,
are at phase 1?
There's 3.
3 acres and how many units? 90?
There's 90, so we'd have 4 acres with, 130. No, 120.
so as far as traffic, you're talking about if there was a commercial property there, the only access they would have would be out to State Street, but wouldn't that also be the same situation people from this apartment would have, or these apartments would have? They would have to go
Yeah,
directly out to
They'd
State
be
Street.
sharing the same entrance as
Yeah.
is already being used.
That's one of the concerns I've heard previously, is that access to State Street is tough already. The traffic's really busy there, and there's really no signals or anything. And so when you're talking about commercial having to access State Street, these folks would also have to access State Street that way.
That's true. The reason why I mentioned that would be just because with a commercial building, they have to have an access from State Street. There's no, so for example, if a fire happens on that commercial property, they have only one access for a fire truck to come in. It's a little bit harder because it narrows down in the back. You'd have to create a bigger area for the fire truck to turn around. This one, there's still that turnaround, but there's also another access for, emergency personnel to get in. Also, like a commercial building, they would have to keep a 20-foot setback from the Avalon property because it's a residential use, and they'd have to stay out of the different easements, and up on the north side, there's a 17-foot easement. So they have a 20-foot setback, 17-foot easement, a 20-foot setback from the front, and then a 10-foot easement from the back. And then they'd have to fit all their parking and their landscaping and their building within all of that, as well as an access to State Street, which has to be yay big, and all these different things that have been brought up in the past by other developers. That's kind of why I brought up that State Street access. But I think everyone can agree that a State Street access, no matter how you put it, is kind of a disaster unless there's a light right there, and these people unfortunately aren't close enough to a light,
No, they're not.
This and many other states State Street would be prohibited, 3 lanes in each direction separated by a 2-way left turn lane. If you're gonna put 3 lanes, they'd put a median down the middle, and you can't make that left turn, period. It'd be right in, right out, or, you know, it would, only here do they, the State Street does cause quite a, but it's here. It's here, and we have to deal with it.
Another question I have is, how many other properties do we have right now that are zoned, the senior housing overlay zone?
I can pull that up. We have, here, I can just show you on the county parcel map really
I mean,
quick.
as far as having potential to provide housing for seniors with that, you know, in that, the 55 and older, I think
Mhm.
we do have several
Well, there's
other,
one right over here, by the school.
yeah,
Never been built.
that hasn't been built. And so, I guess one of my things is that I think there are potential properties for that purpose.
But yet we're constantly hearing, we want more senior, people want to downsize, we want that. We keep hearing that over and over and over again from the community, you know.
And I'm saying there are areas we have zoned potentially for that.
We do have this area by by that Sheridan's Furniture place off of Main Street. That was rezoned, I want to say, 2018. Since then, all land use applications have expired. There's
But it
been
is,
quite a
the
few.
zoning is there. though.
The zoning is still there, but the building permit, nothing.
I think this
Never
property is unique in the fact, if somebody were to be coming to me saying, here, this commercial property, and we want to take this commercial property and convert it to residential right on State Street, we would all have a hard and fast no. I think this is somewhat different in the fact that it's merely an extension of something that's already there, that's already perceived by the community as being of value. And then that lot does, you know, I drive by, somebody wants that lot, you know, and so we've actually found a use for a lot where we all recognize the fact that commercial property isn't as valuable as it once was along State Street. I mean, it seems like if we have it, all we get is car lots.
And yet we are getting quite a few new commercial buildings on State Street. We are.
So, remind me, our 2 projects that are under construction right now, the multifamily,
Well, there's
what are
just
they per acre?
Court?
How
Are you
many
talking about the
units per acre?
townhomes?
less than 10 per acre,
Yeah.
Less than 10 per acre.
right? And this
And
would,
there was heartburn by
that's right,
people, and this is gonna be
30 per acre.
This
Right on
ordinance
State
has
Street.
been in place since at least
Yes, I
2013.
know that.
Okay.
But I guess I'm just sort of putting this out. Is everybody okay with that, 30 per acre?
You know, in this, I've been serving
Is
for
it
a
a
while,
slippery
but
slope
as,
for us?
yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, and I've been serving for a while, and when the Avalon was originally put in, it was, the way that they convinced us to do that was that if I recall correctly, it was to be part of a campus, you know. There were to be some cottages, there were to be some, 55 and older, and it was kind of a campus transitioning to the care facility. And then when it came, and so that kind of convinced us that this would be a good thing, and then when it came right down to it, all we got were the apartments. And so I'm struggling with it. But those are some of my feelings, and to put it right on State Street, that's difficult for me in a commercial area.
If I was to, oh, sorry, you're done.
No, well, I know that it probably is a piece that is hard to develop commercially, but I still think eventually it would. And I hate to take a commercial property and put 30 units per acre housing on it. That's my thoughts.
Yes.
What's made it hard to develop though commercially is the city has their fingerprints all over that. I developed that old Station Square property, and when they mandated that we put that tunnel under and segregate that, that was never intended to be entered off of State Street. It was intended, that was part of the other lot that's now being built on. The tunnel ended up segregating it. That's why I sold all those lots to Brigham Ashton. I was ticked. But now I like it because I love riding my bike under that tunnel. So, I mean, I thought the tunnel was the stupidest thing in the world. And, yeah, but it did mess that lot up, I'll be honest.
I think part of the reason I struggle with high-density apartments and stuff, that is calls for service. It has a substantially negative impact when you pile in density. But when you say density is 55 plus, that substantially reduces that call for service and that load on the police department, fire department, all of those. And it may very well, we're saying 30 units, but how many of those 30 units are actually gonna drive when they get older in age? We have to assume they all are, but the reality is how many actually are. Is there a bus service there to take the seniors to places if they choose to go or not?
Could you share with us the demographics of how Avalon has shaken out over there? Because that's part of the reason, Sharon, that we kind of bought off on it, is we've seen it as that womb to tomb transition over to, from there to Osmond, and that there wouldn't be a lot of driving. How's it shaken out?
I don't remember anything. Well, I wasn't involved in the initial. I was one of the owners, and then I ended up buying the rest out. I don't remember anything about a development other than 2 apartment buildings.
Yeah, when we were brought in, so we designed the original 2 apartment buildings, but when we were brought in, we were told that was the plan. We weren't part of the original zone change.
Right.
So there was a discussion, apparently, that happened before we got involved, where there were some other things represented. So I don't honestly know the details of how that.
But how have the demographics shaken out?
Are there a lot of children there now?
Excuse me?
Are there a lot of children living in the
They
apartments?
can be over
No,
under
it can't be
18.
under 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even in a lot of 55 and older, they can have grandchildren living with them.
At least 18.
Have to be 18.
Yeah. And I've only heard of 1 or 2 on occasion that have come through that were grandchildren at all, but they were all over 18.
Okay.
The demographics are most of the people that live there actually are single, meaning more than the majority. So like 60, 65%. They're all, again, over 55, and if they're living alone, and the rest are generally a couple. And the number of cars there that we have been generally around. The existing number is around 90 cars, and we have 108 parking spaces. And so that hasn't been an issue. So, yeah, as far as
No, it sounds like pretty much every door, for the most part, has a car.
yeah, generally there may be some that have 2 and others that don't have.
Don't have any at all.
But, yeah.
But that does kind of validate the standard that's in the ordinance right now of a 1-to-1 relationship between the unit and the car.
Yeah.
So on this new site plan that we've prepared, we actually have 1 extra stall, 30 units and I think 34.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 extra stalls in there.
Yeah.
So what do you say the average age is? I mean, do you have a lot of 55-year-olds, or are they only 60, 65?
70s.
Yeah, I think it's more 60, 65 as a general
How
rule.
about male to female, just out of curiosity?
I don't know the answer, I'm sorry. I don't know. I would think it's fairly mixed there. I haven't sensed any pattern other than that.
That's it, the neighborhood knows. I'm like trying to remember.
I see you have a driveway coming out of this new section, but it also goes into the other section. Is it reasonable to say that if we eliminated another access to State Street, it would be safer to have all the residents exit out of the existing one? Is that feasible, or is it too high a volume?
So the issue with that is, when you develop a piece of property, you always have to maintain access to the public way, right? So if in the event, at some point down the road, if this were to be, subdivided again, or different ownership, or if that if that access were eliminated, we'd be in a pretty precarious situation, because there's no way that we're gonna go back to UDOT and get an access reinstated that was abandoned at one point.
Okay.
You know, the fact that it's there right now and we can use it, I think we keep it, but the fact that we can also connect it to the
There's
other development that's next to it, I
Yeah,
think that would provide.
you
a
wouldn't wanna
couple
give
different
that
things.
up, but you could make it to where people really had a one-way preference in and out of there by the way you
You
designed
could
that.
make that exit a right turn only.
You could, I mean, you could kind of force it right in, right out,
Yeah.
by house design,
You're fine.
yeah.
For whatever reason, the original, well, we have fire access gated off at the bottom of the property into
Right.
the subdivision below. And I'm sure that even though we were there before, that was by design, that they wanted to somehow keep it on State Street, which, based on the concerns I'm hearing, gosh, it would be nice if that was open and they could have access into the community down below.
The other thing about the cross-access, right now, it does make a lot of sense for the senior-focused housing buildings that are on the property to be interconnected with drives that, you know, go between the properties. If that were to be developed as a commercial piece of property, an office or otherwise, I don't
There
know
wouldn't be
that the
crossover.
owners would
Yep.
be really excited about that. And so then you've got another access that.
That would
kind of
for
a
sure be,
It would have
Yeah.
to be there, it would be a discrete access
Yeah.
from the main one that's there now, and then you've got kind of this right turn problem going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, again, and I should mention also, right now, we're showing the access on the eastern side of the property. Once we get into the civil engineering and we understand what the relative grades are between the two properties, there's a good possibility that we may move
Flop
it
it.
down to the west end.
Mhm.
Because that gets it further into the property. We'd have to reconstruct the dumpster, but that actually might be a nicer flow to the property.
And that would probably give a bigger buffer, like in where you are, if
Right.
somebody's making a left turn out, you know,
There's a longer
There's-
throat on the
there's a
access.
longer stroke, yeah.
Yep.
What I can tell you about the access from my experience is the first thing that when we first built, that we heard was we couldn't see, people couldn't see the access point. There was no lighting. We came, got a permit and added a light out on that, what was then the Osmond corner on our side of the property. So you can see where our property line would go straight up. There's now a light there which lights up that whole entry so that people can see it in the nighttime. That was a concern that we addressed already. So I think that the pattern that I've noted when I'm trying to get out there, when I'm visiting, is that the cars come in groups, which is because there's lights on the ends. And so when you don't dive out there, you just give it a second, and then there'll be an opening where there'll be a significant opening, even though your concern is totally valid. But that's what's happening.
What are your projected rents for those? Does this fit into moderate income housing or what's?
Yeah, I've had that conversation with Mike, and if, based on what I understood from Mike, as far as how that average is calculated, this would actually be on the lower end, because the rents would be, you know, somewhere in that $1,000 range, and would be considered lower on the, I think you take the average and,
But they're 700-foot apartments too.
I can look it up.
yeah, and so,
So what are the rents that are in the project now? Is that not projected rents, but is that what you're saying, you're about 1,000 average?
well, actually, the rents existing currently, those two buildings have multiple sizes.
Right.
And this one,
So give me the small, medium, large, if that's what it is.
right, so we have some 3 bedrooms that are up into the upper $1,200 range, and even getting closer to the $1,300 of late. And so, yeah, I think that.
Were there any one-bedrooms in the?
There are 1-bedrooms, and there's a waiting list actually
For
for
one-bedroom.
1-bedrooms, so that's.
What do they go for?
Well, they're going actually from 900 up into the over 1,000. I would have, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, but that's, yeah, my memory of that. And they've of late been continually going up.
Do you charge them extra for a covered parking space?
Yes, they do charge rent for.
Okay.
So to be clear, these are market rents, or is this
They are market rents.
Okay.
You know, we're at market.
This one.
And our biggest competitor would be the, down in Pleasant Grove, that Grove Creek, isn't that what it's called? Grove Creek, and they added on not long ago, and
Grove,
they did
or-
pretty much all one-bedrooms as well. That seems to be where the,
So is that mainly what you'd be doing in a new phase, would be mostly one bedrooms?
yes,
All one-bedrooms.
yeah, they're all one-bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I think is because what we're seeing is that there's inflation, and these 55 and older, they have a limited budget, and there's just more.
Even though you're dropping a story off over there, you'd still have elevators, correct?
We would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the building code actually allows us to do this building with no elevator.
Right,
We do it
'cause
up to 4 stories.
Right, but with
But,
it being
with
55 and older, you still,
demographic,
yeah.
Yeah, it does make
Yeah.
sense not to.
When I first started here, I'd received lots of complaints about parking on, what's that street?
The backside
This
of
one.
it.
Backside, I used to receive a lot of complaints. I haven't received those in quite a while, but I also haven't been monitoring it. I went by today and there wasn't anybody parked on there, because there's a gate that you can go through, so people were parking out on the street there and stuff, but I haven't received as many complaints, or haven't received any complaints.
You know what, and I was getting neighbors telling me when it was going on, and it seemed like it was mostly during the move-in stages.
Move
when
in and
peop-
out,
where-
you're
Where
right.
people, you were parking a moving van down there. But I haven't gotten any complaints from any of my neighbors down there for a long time either.
So we, depending on the education process again, we may
Yeah.
get some of that again with the 30 units, but this is a little bit further away too.
Yeah, it'd be a bigger walk for them to move their furniture.
You mentioned you'd like to see that gate open.
I'm not asking for the gate to be open, but I find it an interesting dichotomy to what we're suggesting, that, getting out on the state street's a problem. There's a solution to that if it was compelling enough.
Creates another problem.
Yeah, the neighborhood would, yeah,
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 that's
I'm-
not how
I'm
we
with you.
sold it. to
we'd
the
all be looking for
neighborhood.
new jobs.
Well, this is a public hearing, and since we don't have any other public let's go ahead and close the public hearing, and we can bring the discussion back up here.
I move to close the public hearing.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. So what are your thoughts up here with commissioners?
To me, it makes sense to use this parcel for that. I've got heartburn a little bit about how many units per acre
I do
it
too,
is.
yeah, I really do.
I mean, we argued with, well, I shouldn't say argued, we pushed back on these last two
That's
developments.
right,
On how many per acre.
right.
And we're a lot higher than.
Oh,
what
yeah,
those are.
I mean, 30 per acre, that's,
If
that's
this is
high.
different, I'm mixed.
Well, what's been built's, a lot more than what was given down the street, but it was mainly because it was 55 and older. We were liking the idea of it being next there to Hosman.
but we thought that
facility.
whole area was gonna develop differently though than it did too. So. Karen, what's your thoughts?
I haven't been here for some of the other ones that were
Yeah.
less dense, so for me, I think 30 per acre compared to what I have down by me, it doesn't seem like a big deal. I think it's different where you guys, this location
Right.
is very different,
Right.
so I
Down by
mean.
you like in Pleasant Grove.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Or vineyard.
I was trying not to call them out, but.
Yeah.
So, but I think it is something you need to consider, I mean, because I wasn't here for the other ones that you've approved and what they wanted or whatever, so that's harder for me to have an opinion about that.
Well, I
I
guess.
like the idea of seeing one that's been relatively successful and good and a good neighbor. I feel better about it, maybe even being better and having some more units in there, but I wish we could take some away somewhere else,
Well,
which we
as
can't
much-
do.
As much as the residents push back at that higher density though,
Who?
Well-
The residents
Well,
of
we,
Lindon, they really pushed back, and that's the reason why we, with the townhomes, those were so, per acreage was
It's apples and
really
oranges.
low.
yeah, it's not a
It's
It's
comparable
apples and
product.
oranges,
It
and
is, but at the same time, this is, 30 units per acre is a high density.
And I'm gonna, what I would say to somebody who came to me and gave me, says, this is also modern income housing, which is mandated by the state, where everything else that they've built is not
Nothing
modern income
close to
housing. It's
this.
not even close to modern income housing.
Yeah.
It's like a for-profit, make a lot of money type of development. And so this is so different, and this is unique because it's definitely different than the property we're dealing with over here, where this doesn't impact a neighborhood. It doesn't.
So next week, let's say next week, somebody
I
comes
know.
in and wants to do a 30 per acre on 7th North.
They'd have to have a senior housing facility overlay.
Yeah, see, and that's where the senior, and that's
That's
why,
the only
and that's why
reason
I'm,
we did,
that's
did
why,
what we did, there's the senior component to
yeah,
it.
and that's what gives me hope. Okay, this is not gonna negatively impact the community, other than a
Alright.
left turn in and out of the driveway, where other high-density apartments.
So if somebody comes in, wants to develop this piece right over here by the school, that didn't, that expired,
Yeah, so
that's a
that,
senior housing.
yeah, that's
That
because
could be
the zone
30
was
per acre.
changed, it's 30 units per acre there. Uh-huh.
Just like we did here, we mirrored it, and
Yeah.
But I just want to clarify, if they have on-site management, the ordinance says they can go to 32 units.
right,
Yeah.
If they don't have on-site management, their maximum is 15 units to the acre
that's
For
true.
senior housing.
for senior housing.
Yeah, that's right, I remember,
And they have to
again,
provide,
there's economy and scale by, where they've already got an established management team set up there. Again, I
You
know
have
we can't
on-site
take it away from the others that haven't built yet, but
Yeah, we have on-site management, are there 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, actually a full-time maintenance guy and a full-time leasing agent that really manages the whole property, and an assistant manager.
And your concept is to kind of commingle the campus, make it one big.
Oh,
campus.
exactly.
One campus, yeah.
Yes. And can I make comment?
Sure.
That my biggest concern, I want to come back to where I started, is that if this isn't something that the council or the commissioners don't feel good about, what are you going to put in there that's going to be compatible with those 45 residents that are sitting right there already, residents of the city? That's why I'm here, it's because of those, it isn't really about the money. I mean, we can go away and find another place, because that isn't, the issue is I'm protecting what's already there. And I just want to make sure that's understood, because if you put in a tin building with a volleyball court inside of it, or a restaurant with all of the stuff that goes behind a restaurant, and the trucks that come in to dump the food, and meaning to, deliver, there are issues here as far as a commercial property where any of those things that Mary mentioned, well, those would be just horrendous for them as residents. And so I feel strongly that priority needs to be maintained in
But
what.
I don't see much difference in, say a restaurant, or you're talking, the commercial abuts residential in many places, in
Oh,
the
I
city.
understand.
That's not an unsolvable problem, but so having, worked in the industry for, 30 years and designing commercial site plans all day long, every day, that is nearly an impossible site to solve. It's not impossible, it's extremely challenging though. What you have to do is what they did on the property south. And, they got that to work, but it was very expensive, and they've got this weird drive-through in the back, and they're isolated from other commercial, and there are 100 different reasons why that was a really challenging situation. What we've got here is a situation where you've got a developer who is willing to put in more of what's already working. It's not in a position where it threatens adjacent neighborhoods. It's isolated from other properties. I served on the Pleasant Grove Planning Commission for 4 years, and one of the things we were always concerned about is when we make a change here, we also make a change someplace else because we're affecting a zoning law.
Right.
When, in this particular case, you're doing a zoning overlay, which is isolated to a specific piece of property. So there's really not the threat of this getting out of control and it becoming something that, you know, shows up on other properties in the city and you didn't intend it to happen. This is an isolated piece of property. There's also, in the general plan, there are implementation policies that, as a city, that you are instructed as the commission to kind of keep in mind as you're talking about and thinking about where to accommodate all members of the community, including those who are 55 and over.
Right, and that's why
So-
we've, we have zoned
Right.
several
But
properties.
Just maybe stating, I guess in conclusion, that if this is a wonderful use for this piece of property, very little threat of others in the city kind of feeling kind of imposed on by the development of more of what's already working well. I think that if you had to come up with a particular, like a perfect scenario to use that awkward little piece of property, this is kind of it.
I think Anderson Farms is an example of, we said, okay, we're 55 plus, but it didn't happen. I think it would happen here. You know, there's a section down in Anderson Farms where that really wasn't enforced that way, if you know what I mean. So, this would be, and so this is actually, we know we're gonna get that 55 plus, that lower impact to the community out of this location than you are other locations.
And this, I'll say that the Ivory 55 plus was not deed restricted. This is required to be deed restricted to 55 plus residents. So it will only have 55 plus residents.
Steve, what are your thoughts on this? And Jared?
Well, I guess I go back, I wasn't involved when the overlay was created or whatever, but the overlay was definitely thought about and passed with an amount. Back when it was, to me, it makes sense in this particular place to extend the overlay. I mean, the overlay probably makes more sense here than it does over here or other places to me.
And if y'all remember, those that were here, that one came first. But Jeff jumped on this, got it going, and then, because there's only a limited market demographically for 55 and older, and
Right.
guys that cater to that market know what the market is and typically don't overbuild to cause a problem. They got units and no renters. So that, we've seen how that's kind of played out by the one that was overlay zoned first, still hasn't done anything. And they probably won't do anything again, especially if we add 30 more units. Yeah, you follow me there?
Yeah. And it's like I was saying, to me, it makes sense for the overlay here. I think it's very, very different. I can't compare it to the other two as far as density. Those are for a very different demographic in a very different place. I mean, if I'm thinking right, Mary, right, there, this new property, I don't even think it abuts any residential, right? It's
It
commercial all the way around.
Yeah, let me show
So-
you.
Right, I mean, because of the medical building on the
Right.
one side, there's not even
The trail.
the trail on the one side. I mean, that residence is to the old Avalon, but not to the new,
Yeah.
right? And so I just don't see, to me, it's very different. It makes sense. This makes sense to me. Yeah, do I worry about the density? Maybe a little bit, because Lindon's not about density. But I'm gonna trust that when people made the overlay, they understood what needed to happen for this to happen, right? I mean, to have affordable housing in the 55-plus market,
That's what the density does, is make it affordable. So
that's,
Well, that's why I wanted to know really what the rents are. Is it truly serving a niche that nobody else is? And I would say that it is.
yeah, rents at that place, I think, they're, like you said, there's probably waiting lists for those types of properties for people, because I would say that's probably cheaper than most of the basement apartments in Lindon, right? And so it's one of those things where they can go and then have a community and feel like they're part of something.
Jared, what?
Yeah, I like the project. I'm in the housing business, as you guys know, and I actually have 55-plus apartments in Orem, built under the the senior overlay zone. Orem senior overlay zone has actually been changed since they originally put out it. You can't build and make the numbers work at all, senior housing in Orem. And it's been a while since I've reviewed that ordinance, but I mean, it's so restrictive that you just can't do it. We're actually really generous here in Lindon. And
Why do you say that?
because you can only, the density difference is so drastic between what we're doing here in Lindon and what they're doing in Orem, for example. So, I've got 2 fourplexes, and it's hard to create a community for 55 and older with 2 units. It's just not.
You need some numbers.
You need some numbers, and to be able to have some open spaces, and I guess you've got some gardening spaces and things like that. It does take some numbers to create that. You're just not gonna get it with, you know, an 8-plex or even a 16-plex. You're just not gonna get it, you know? So I like that aspect of it.
But because they don't get it, they usually don't end up with 55
Yeah, so,
and older.
and for the most part, I've got really good tenants over there, but 55 is like the new 45. I mean, let's be honest, just 55, a lot of you guys are there, right? So it's not like this is a little old lady that sits in her apartment and knits all day. They're active, they're going out, they're driving, they've got multiple cars if it's a couple. I mean, so, you know, we do make a big allowance because we attach seniors to it, but they're gonna be a pretty active community. And so traffic is a concern in having that amount of density, but as has been said, and not to be redundant, I think it does have minimal impact to residents in that area of Lindon. So really, I like it. I think it'd be nice to have something there rather than a lot that grows weeds. And there's a
Definitely
lot
would
of
button
people.
up that stretch there.
I think the need for 55 and older apartments is actually is growing significantly. So, I don't know what your occupancy rates have been over the years, but I would suspect that
Been really, really good lately.
they're gonna be, and those rents
Yeah.
are, I'm surprised that's a market rent, because that seems a little low, but that's.
That's market rent, and we've continually had pressure to raise it, but, no, there is a waiting list for the 1-bedrooms. That, what I'm
Yeah.
suggesting by that is that those, particularly the older ones, Social Security, they have a limited amount of funds, and they're finding it more and more difficult. And so, that's why we've designed this for the 1-bedroom, to try,
I think
again, to
that's-
accommodate
I think
that.
that's smart.
700 square feet too. That's
I
not,
think that's perfect. I really think
Yeah,
that's a
I
good
do
I
product.
mean, that's not a big lot. It's gonna be easy to say that they're probably gonna stay within moderate income housing for many years to come at a 700 square foot apartment.
Yeah, they're gonna get that apartment, they're gonna stay there for a long time, would be my guess. I mean,
That's
I
generally the case.
I deal with this a lot, and oftentimes, we just cannot rent to people in that demographic because they just simply can't afford
Yeah.
what the market has done with rents, and so when they find something, they stay there. Especially something that's accessible, that would have an elevator and not stairs and things like that.
So I don't recall on what's been built. I know we had 1-bedrooms, I know we had 3-bedrooms. Are there 2-bedrooms too over there? Were
Yeah.
there any 2s?
Yes,
Yeah.
there is. There's a mix.
Okay. So it
But
wasn't
these
either
would be
1 or
all
3, it's 1, 2, or
one-bedrooms.
3 in the first, in that, what's been built.
And baths as well,
Yeah.
so there's some different mixes.
Which that brings up a point. We're saying here that that anybody staying with them has to be 18 years or older. It's a 1-bedroom apartment. The odds of that occurring are pretty slim.
Yeah, on the
So
new phase.
on the new
Yeah,
phase,
on the new phase.
we're not looking at 18-year-olds in there. Because it's a 1-bedroom apartment.
Rob?
I feel good about it. I think that an expansion of this, I particularly feel good about it because it doesn't, I don't think we're opening Pandora's box on 30 per acre on a whole bunch of other parcels. It's just that overlay area. It's already there. I brought it up because I just felt like we should
Yeah.
think about it, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't give me heartburn for that location. I feel good about it.
Well, it sounds like that the rest of the commission are in favor of it, so I'm willing to go along with that. And then,
Your
But the-
hesitation is just the,
well,
per
the access
acre.
onto State Street, just the amount per acre, giving up a commercial property, you know, those kinds of things, you know.
See, I'd be less inclined if they hadn't dropped it down to 3-story,
Oh, yeah,
you know?
I agree.
It feels good, and then it is what it is. There's no way to expand that project anymore. It is what it is if we go along with it.
Okay.
And if we do pay, as far as losing the commercial property, there has been recently, we've been hearing a lot about the fact that due to Amazon and all these other things, it's a revenue generating business in and of itself. Everything that's shipped there via Amazon property, its sales tax is paid to the city of Lindon. So apartments do generate income where they
Sure
didn't.
do.
A little bit.
They're shopping at
they didn't-
Walmart, they're eating at the restaurants. they're-
Yeah.
Well, are we ready for a motion then? Do you want to make a motion? I was talking to,
Let me see if I
Scott.
can find it.
and then we'll see what the council's feelings on it are.
Yes, I'm prepared to make a motion. I move to recommend approval of ordinance 20-2023-19-0 to amend Lindon City zoning map to add senior housing facility overlay to the property at 183 North State Street.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous.
Thank you. Will this
Thank
be on
you.
the council agenda for next Monday?
You'll have to ask.
Yeah,
Prior,
that's
yeah.
18.
Is that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
It's 5:15.
The agenda will come out either tomorrow night or Thursday morning, and so we'll send that to you and kind of let you know when to show up. It's a busy, big agenda, so.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next item. Okay.
Another
I
one.
know the next item on the agenda is a public hearing.
It is,
Uh-huh,
the short-term rentals.
so we do need a motion to open a public
Oh, yeah,
hearing
sure.
again.
So
make a
moved
motion.
again. Well, go
Okay.
ahead.
I'll make a motion.
You want a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous, and this is ordinance amendment 17.80, short-term rentals. And the applicant is Lindon City, and our presenting staff is Mike Florence.
All right, thank you, commissioners. So in 2020, I presented just some talking points with the city council about short-term rentals. At that time, they asked me to put some general ordinance requirements together. I've said on this for quite a while because I just wasn't receiving a lot of complaints about short-term rentals, and then recently I've started to receive a lot more. And so I thought, well, it's probably time to bring this back before the planning commission and city council and have a discussion about a draft or proposed ordinance and discuss this with you. So just looking at Airbnb, Lindon City has about 19 short-term rentals in the community. They're popular, you know, we've got some bigger homes here, and so those, I think for that reason, are popular. We also have a lot of people that are renting out their basements as a short-term rental for extra income. Some of these are destination places and things like that. So under the state law, short-term rental is defined as a residential unit or a portion of a residential unit that the owner of record or the leasee of the residential unit offers for occupancy for fewer than 30 consecutive days. one of the ones that, let me go to it real quick. The home that I had been receiving complaints on is just off 400 North and 400 East. It's this home here. It's our, uh-oh. Sorry, I don't know what happened here.
It's hard in the cul-de-sac. 650 north and 400 east.
There we go.
You know, huh?
No, well, I think I know where that
It's
is.
this, yeah, it's this one here.
That's the short-term rental?
Yeah, this is a short-term rental. The owners have moved to Florida. They're renting it. They advertise it as you can sleep 19 people. You could bring your RV there. So that's what was happening is people were bringing their RVs. They'd have at least 19 people plus people in the RV. The residents were about fit to be tight because there's no parking on the cul-de-sac. Just a lot of issues like that. And so what I've done is just try to put some basic requirements together for this ordinance. So one that it would require. Oh, it's froze up. Okay.
Yeah, no one's here. Bring the cookies. I guess we're still on camera.
So just going through the ordinance real quick, we did add, this was a comment from Brian that, we just adopted that bed and breakfast ordinance, so we should distinguish between a short-term rental and a bed and breakfast. So that's what we added here at the end of the ordinance, was that a short-term rental does not include a bed and breakfast use, a bed and breakfast dwelling, bed and breakfast farm retreat dwelling, or bed and breakfast guest room. And so, going through this, we would require a business license. So one thing you need to think about on this is you're allowing a commercial use into a residential zone, and so you're allowing accommodation use. So that's what we're proposing here, is that that they be licensed as a commercial business. Then just going through these things, it shouldn't be rented to more than one renter at a time. So no.
Define that.
More than one person on a contract?
No,
So
so
let's say,
Two different units.
let's
on
say
it.
two brothers and their families wanna rent that.
that would be fine. What we're saying is that the home should not divide or
think a
rent out
duplex.
portions of the dwelling
I
to
see.
multiple users.
Upstairs and downstairs.
That's correct.
And Mike, with that, what if, so, I think I mentioned that I'm aware of a situation where they have, they live in part of the home, they have a basement rental, and they also have a short-term rental. Would this exclude that? Under that definition, right? So they have an accessory apartment, and then they have,
No, because they're only using one as a short-term rental.
I just wonder if, is that been addressed by that question or not?
Yeah, this does not distinguish between that.
So they would be okay in
They
that
probably would
situation
be
would probably
okay.
be okay in this ordinance? Okay,
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. And this next one, this number's fluid, but I put in a maximum occupancy. The maximum occupancy, sorry, I need to get a drink, is 12 related individuals, 4 unrelated. That 4 unrelated comes to that definition of family that we use elsewhere in our zoning code, that you can't rent to more than 4 unrelated individuals, or that's found elsewhere. So that number 12 is fluid. If you wanted to see it higher or lower, we can have that discussion. Number 3, that a short-term rental shall not be located within 300 feet of another short-term rental as measured from property lines along the same side of the street. So that creates some separation distance. It also helps it so that we're not getting more than one on a cul-de-sac. Scott, you had a question
Is
about
that,
guess is that, I don't know if fair is the right word, I mean, but I'm here first, therefore nobody else can.
So I'm here first, nobody on either side of me can do it now.
Yeah.
Is that
That's what,
common?
Hurricane City does that. Sandy City does that as well, but they also regulate, you can only have so many per district, similar to our R2 overlay zone. You can only have, you know, say 10 per district. They have their city divided up into like 40 different districts. So yes, that is something we can do, whether it's fair or not, let's have that discussion.
And I'm assuming that would be regulated by business license?
Mhm.
Because, right, they'd be required to get a business. Are they currently required to get a business
They're
license?
not.
No, okay.
No.
So this would be a new requirement to get a business license, and that's how it would regulate distance. Okay.
I gotta go back to number 2 just briefly.
Yeah.
Number 2, for unrelated people.
Mhm.
If we pulled out our ancestry apps right now, we're probably gonna find that half of us are 14th cousin twice removed. Unrelated is not a term that you can really hang your hat on here in Utah.
Maybe people visit.
It's a pretty standard definition that.
But what is the definition of
most-
unrelated?
Yeah.
Same family.
Yeah, most cities will say a family equals 4 unrelated individuals. So,
Okay, I'm just saying,
yeah. The next one is they've got to have 2 off-street parking spaces for the short-term rental. So Commissioner Johnson, that may be where it's more regulated, is to have 2 off-street parking spaces. You know, so if they do have a home, a short-term rental, they're renting a accessory apartment as well, you know.
Right, so in that case, they would, okay. And so not a driveway, it'd have to be behind,
Could be a driveway, it could be, 2 in the garage, 2 on the driveway.
okay. So that, it's not like the accessory apartment was where it had to be behind the behind
That's
the
correct.
home. It's just, so driveway would count in that.
Yes.
Okay.
so this situation where you have 12 related, that means you're having a family reunion. You have a parent, 3 siblings, their kids, everything. We know that if that's the case, if that number 12 is there, they are gonna flow out onto the street.
Yeah, and
Well,
that's where,
Family reunions
they're
are
gonna have more-
restricted, though.
Yeah, but they might have to go find parking
Well,
elsewhere.
what's the definition of a family reunion? I mean, if you don't just, hey, we're all, all the siblings were just getting together for the weekend, is a reunion, would that be prohibited? I mean,
so we are, in this ordinance, we do say family reunions
Right.
are prohibited. Let me get to that in just a minute, we can have that discussion. So the parking does say, the number of vehicles allowed by the occupants of the short-term rental for overnight parking shall be restricted to the number of off-street parking spaces provided by the owner. So if we're seeing issues with parking, they're gonna either have to decrease the amount of parking that their vehicles are allowing. Now, I have seen some city ordinances that say you're prohibited from parking on the city street for the short-term rental. I didn't include that, I just said you've gotta have enough parking for the vehicles that you're allowing there. So if that's something you want to add, we could add.
I worry a little bit about that, saying just to have it. I mean, that could be a discussion, but a lot of times they have it, but then it's not really even available, really, I mean, they show that they have it in the driveway, but then a boat gets parked in that spot, and then it's really not available for the short term. So if that's a concern, maybe we need to look at not being able to park on the street.
The next one, that the property owner shall designate a responsible party who is a local individual property management company within the state of Utah that can respond within an hour to a complaint. And so if the police department comes, they have to have someone in state that can arrive in an hour. That was pretty typical with a lot of ordinances. Another one that was typical is number 6, was including a nameplate on the outside by the door saying, here's the contact information for the responsible party. And then also having an information packet on the inside, on the interior, saying, here's the contact information again for the responsible party, here's your parking requirements. If that person's required to take out the garbage, here's the day they do it. Here's non-emergency contact for Lindon Police Department. Here's your maximum occupancy. That the short-term rental shall not be used for lodging accommodation, a short-term rental shall only be used for lodging accommodations and not rented or leased for events, family reunions, weddings, receptions, parties, or other similar activities or operations. We did have one across the street from Wadley Farms to the south, where they were allowing people to rent it for overnight accommodations plus use it for reception centers. So Allen College was telling me how he'd be out there trying to direct people to come into Wadley Farms, but he was accidentally sending people into Wadley Farms when they were for the reception across the street there. And so
How would that be controlled? That's sort of difficult. I mean, somebody's gonna go on the site and they're gonna book it as a residence and we have no idea. So now a party starts and it's clearly a wedding reception. What authority do we have now to go in and say, okay, you're out, move?
It's gonna be complaint driven.
yeah,
But will we have that authority to do that? Will we
So-
have, is this enforceable is what I guess what I'm asking.
So we will call the responsible party, have them respond in an hour and have them take care of it. Maybe it doesn't get resolved that night, but then we reach out to the property owner and discuss, hey, you're not complying with your business license requirements. You could have your business license revoked. Last three items, short-term rentals shall meet building code requirements for egress and installation of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Outdoor pools, hot tubs, outdoor sport courts shall not be used between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So that's similar to like a hotel. They'll set requirements on when the pool closes, when it opens back up. This is just to protect the surrounding neighborhood. And then lastly, short-term rental owners shall be responsible for ensuring that guests or occupants do not create a nuisance as found in the Lindon City Nuisance Code.
Loud music, things like that.
Noise, trash,
Is the city prepared on number 8 to go out and inspect these prior to issuing a business license to make sure the egress, because if they're like renting out a basement apartment that has 2x2 old windows, so we're prepared to do that?
you're running a commercial business there. You need to protect who you're, letting rent your unit, yes. And the state code discusses that. So it discusses about egress windows and for existing structures, and talks about, look, if it's not structurally, if you're not structurally able to do that, then you can be exempt from those requirements. So if you've got a home built in the 50s, you may have some exemption there. We would just have to evaluate that with the building official. So I want you to, we're not under pressure to pass this. I want you to think about it. Love some comments tonight. If you want to move it on to council, you can, but let's discuss this more.
Go to the number 12, where it says 12 people.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be discussed or thought about. Maybe that's tied to square footage. 12's not very many, frankly.
Or I say it, what about the idea of tying it to on-site owner? I mean, I'm okay if I'm renting out my basement, not my whole house. I'm willing, if we know someone's there, but then again, are we restricting them too far? I don't know.
I think so. Let's say you have a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot house, and
You can have more.
you can have more than 12 people in that.
My family's 9 by ourselves.
Yeah.
You're what?
My family's 9 by ourselves, like,
Yeah.
it's not very many.
And I added this to your packet as well. This was the information I provided to the council in 2020. 12 was the highest, 10 was the highest I found,
Really?
just among the cities that are regulating it. So if you don't regulate, there's lots of cities like us right now that currently don't regulate it. And so just going through city ordinances, 10 was the highest I found of those cities that regulate. And so.
So I may or may not have a lot to say on this issue tonight, I don't know, but personally, I would love to see there not be any kind of ordinance, but at the same time, I think it's nice if you're gonna invest in an Airbnb to have an ordinance in the city, rather than spend $30,000 and buy a house or whatever and furnish it, get it set up, and then 2 months later, the city does pass an ordinance. So from that respect, I guess I'm in favor of putting something in place, some sort of framework by which people can operate and the city can have their needs met and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, I'd rather not have any ordinance for short-term rentals. But I have one in Hurricane, and I believe the fire department inspected it, and they are the ones who looked at the safety requirements. And they told me how many people could be in that home based off probably some sort of fire code, I'm guessing.
Exits and, yeah.
They had, and I had to, had to actually put where the exit signs are, and you have to have an evacuation plan, and I'm okay with that, and I think that, so to say that it only could be 12 people, that's a pretty typical stay for an Airbnb.
So
10,
I
12
believe
people.
Hurricane's ordinance does have a limit, but then it says, yeah, it has a maximum occupancy of 10, but then you can increase that occupancy with fire department approval,
Yeah.
is what it says.
Yeah. So I don't know if our fire department, do we have fire department or are we country with Orem?
We contract with Orem.
With Orem.
So, and there's a fee for them to do that, so that's, and the Airbnb operator should pay that fee, and that's not a problem. But then when you have that, so then you issue that license, and that license does give you an opportunity to track it and also to have them comply and enforce and things like that. But some of these things are gonna be really hard to, a lot of Airbnb ordinances are really hard to track.
Yeah.
Like people, like some of these that say, oh, they gotta be there for 6 months of the year, living in the home. You can't track that, or you can only rent it for 30 days a year. That's almost impossible to enforce. So I don't like those kinds of ordinances, for sure.
Well, but the other side of it, playing the other side of that, you're not only protecting the homeowner, you gotta protect the neighbors.
Yeah,
That's the thing that I'm concerned about.
yeah, so,
The neighbors to the
I think there's some merit in saying that the operator should, and maybe the city does, when a city does it, perhaps when a permit is issued, the surrounding neighbors should be notified and know who that contact person is. Because I think the city would much rather the neighbors complain to the representative of whoever that operator, either the operator or the owner, rather than calling the police department. And so that really should be the first line of complaint, is not calling up the police department, but calling up, because a lot of times the host, I say operator, host, owner, sometimes they're different people, but they may not know that
Right.
something's going on.
But if the neighbors call and the police just say, there's no ordinance, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, but if they have a permit and
Right.
you could say, okay, 3 strikes
Yeah.
in a 24-month period, and we're revoking your license, you can no longer operate as a, I mean, I think that's okay, and I think hosts will then wise up and they'll be like, okay, they're telling the guests, look, you guys can't be having a party after 10 o'clock, They don't wanna lose their ability to operate that as an Airbnb if you have something that you can sink your teeth
And most Airbnbs are 2 days or less.
Mine is 2 days. I don't do anything less than a 2-day because then people will rent it for a party.
Yeah.
But they're less likely to rent it for a party if they gotta pay for 2 days.
Well, that's why, the 30 days, is that common? I mean, 30 days seems like a long period of time.
Well, you
Yeah,
do
it's a
have some
common
people that
definition.
come in for work.
That's the state definition.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's how the state determines between a permanent rental and a short-term rental.
And by the way, you don't need a real estate license to manage short-term rentals if the rental periods are less than 30 days. Just a side note, that's
So-
kind of interesting, but.
So do you have clients that are coming in and buying homes specifically for the
We have
intent of
had some.
having a
Yeah.
Airbnb?
We've had some. And one of them was in American Fork, and American Fork doesn't allow it, but they ran one very successfully, and nobody said anything in American Fork for 2 or 3 years. So in other words, a lot of these ordinances are not being enforced, so.
I mean, you've got an Airbnb being advertised right now on Center Street. It's, I think, advertising 25 people. Sleeps 25 or something like that.
Well, and the fire department may have something to say, that might be too many, even if it's a 6,000
No, it's a
square
huge
foot home.
home, and it can probably accommodate.
It might be able to, but the fire department, I know there's gotta be some sort of fire
Yeah,
codes
yeah.
that say something like that. And then the unrelated thing, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, it's just,
No, you have input,
I have people all the time book the one we have in Orem, and they might be having a friends reunion from high school or something, and they're all meeting to go to Education Week, and it could be 6 women or 7 women or something like that. So this whole related and unrelated thing, I don't know why we would wanna regulate that.
Yeah, and I think it's hard, because how are we gonna define that?
Well, how
It's
do you
not a
enforce
party
that?
or a reunion,
How do you enforce?
Well,
you know?
I think the reason for that, and you've probably seen it run into down there in Vineyard, is every unrelated party that you rent to is usually another automobile.
Another
Like
what?
they turn homes into student housing
Oh, I know.
basically,
There's-
as, you know,
I know that's a problem, but
yeah.
And I think you could address that with parking regulation, all this, right? I mean, if there was
That's
no
true.
on-street parking.
It's
I mean,
the
you know, as I've looked at ones to rent, some of them say, you know, you only bring 2 vehicles and they have to be parked in these spots.
And that's part of the inspection when they apply for the
Right.
permit, and they pay, I don't know, $300 or
No
whatever.
on-street parking means red zone? Red zone in front of the house, if it's a full-time Airbnb, a red zone, that says you can't
Well,
park here.
yeah, I mean, I just know I've rented some and they're like, you cannot be on the street. I mean, especially, I mean, we rented one in Anaheim. You talk about, you know, I mean, you can't go outside after 10 o'clock in Anaheim and you know, I mean.
That's for your safety,
Yeah, that's right.
for your own
You know,
safety.
you can't go out to the
They got
pool or
curfews
anything.
there to keep the looting down.
You know, I agree with Jared. I think the non-related thing, I mean, I've got family members who Airbnb, and they'll get college kids that'll rent a house for the weekend and have a big beer bust. You know, 12, 13 college kids get together, and it's just, we don't wanna wreck our apartments, let's go get an Airbnb. And I think that's meant to prevent that kind of stuff.
But a lot of Airbnbs.
But how does it?
I don't, well, how does it?
How does it? You have one person who rents it, and they come in and they go, oh, we didn't rent it knowing we were gonna have a party. And then
No,
we're over
no.
there, and then we're over
No,
breaking up the
code
beer
says
bash.
they can't have 12 people sleeping there that are non-related.
They're just drinking there.
Yeah, but
I
most
mean,
of them,
I'm not saying it prevents it, I'm saying it was meant to prevent it.
True. That's why I'm just really concerned that we create ordinances that are not enforceable. This is something that really, to be honest with you, the chief should be standing here going, how are we gonna do that?
The
How
way
are
you
we gonna do that?
The way you do that, though, is the neighbors complain, and then somebody goes to the owner and says, okay, you've had a complaint. You could lose your license.
Well, that was one of the questions I asked Mike when I was talking to him earlier is, you know, where's the compliance, you know?
Well, and that's where the neighbors
And-
call the host. And if the host doesn't resolve it very quickly, then it escalates to the police, then it becomes a strike.
Yeah.
But then but like Mike said,
Well,
it's tied to their business
If
license.
it's managed
so-
by Airbnb, you got some control. If it's somebody doing their own, it's a little different situation.
I like having, I mean, maybe there's some things that need to be modified, but I like having an ordinance, if for nothing else,
Yeah.
for the protection of other people. You know, because you can really get, I mean, I'm aware of one in our area that, you know, the plans are to do a basement as an Airbnb, and you know, there's not parking. You know, there's just so many things that it's not. And I'm going, gosh, that cul-de-sac's gonna have cars parked all over and boats or motorcycles or whatever. I don't know, I think if for nothing else, the protection of other residents.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I think what you've done is good. I just bring up, maybe we need to think that 12.
Yeah, this was the email that I got from this gentleman. He said, he's like, I understand you can't stop them from renting their home, but there should be some rule that limits the quantity of people that stay there. We feel like we live next door to a motel. If a family is considered 4 to 8 people with 2 to 4 cars, that would be fine. Unfortunately, that is rarely the case. There's often 5 to 6 cars in the driveway with 4 to 6 plus cars in the cul-de-sac. All we are asking is to limit the size of groups staying there so it feels like we live in a normal neighborhood and not next door to a motel. Any help would be appreciated.
Sounds very reasonable about it too.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's great. I like Steve say no on-street parking, but how's that evolve? A call to the police department goes out, knocks on the door, who owns this car? You're not allowed to be here. I mean, it's, once again, it's all about enforcement. I mean,
Well, I
Yes.
think it's, like Mike said, though, it's complaint driven, so if neighbors complain about it, then they can go back to the owner.
I am interested in Jared's comment about, occupancy depending on the size. I could ask our building official, a little bit more information about that and bring this back to you, in the next couple meetings and.
Like that too,
See if a bunch of 6 ladies get together, old friends, and they want to go to education week. We don't want to stop that.
but no, we don't. No, we don't.
Well, and I actually have a lot of people that will rent ours, and it serves as sort of the home base for having a barbecue. And so I may sometimes have 20 people. I have plenty of parking, but I might have 20 people there sometimes, and I've actually
they're
had
not
a
staying
small-
overnight though,
No.
are they?
Not everybody necessarily has their own car either, because, I mean, we rent our Suburban out on Turo. Lots of people rent it for old friend reunions and things, and just.
You rent it out for what?
Turo, just rent out our.
Turo, it's
Like
Yeah,
an
it's kinda like
Airbnb
Airbnb
cars.
for cars.
Really?
Yeah, we have lots of people that rent it, just friends that come,
Really,
town
that's
and-
interesting.
yeah, they go skiing and,
Yeah, it'd be tough for me, like at my property, if I rented mine Airbnb, how could I control what they do with the pavilion and the,
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be really tough. You're gonna rent it to a family that says, we're a family, we're gonna rent this. But you have no control over what really happens.
Well,
And complaint driven, the problem with complaint driven enforcement on complaint driven really isn't a conviction. I mean somehow if they are convicted, if the owner is proven to be liable for these 3 things 3 times, okay, now we have something where it went through, but just to say complaint driven I think the homeowner could turn around and sue the city going, well, you're taking away my money, and what proof do you have other than someone complained?
No, but that's where, again, a neighbor takes a picture of bad parking, sends it to the host. The host can make a call to that guest and rectify that immediately,
Yeah.
rather than us calling and having the police department spend unnecessary resources on that. But, and it's.
They give reviews on those people.
So, and if you got video of loud partying, I mean, so that's more than, calling Mike or writing an email to Mike, saying, it's like living next to a hotel. Well, give me some video, give me some pictures of it or whatever, but, it's like Sunday afternoon, my neighbor's having their kids over for a party. I mean, I got parking all up and down the street. I mean, we
Right,
all have
right,
that to some extent, but if it's happening over and over and over again, then, the neighbors, I think, and as a host, I'd be okay hearing from a neighbor. I'd rather hear from a neighbor that something's going on than the police department calling me that something's going
But
on.
I think a lot of those complaints should go to the host, but maybe parking is traffic. Police could go to the traffic.
But somebody's parking on the street's not illegal.
It is if you put a red curb in front of their house, in front of
Well, it
their
is if
long-term
you
rental.
restrict it. I mean, and like you say, the reason you're restricting it is because this guy that's living in the cul-de-sac, it becomes just a parking lot for him. He can't
But
even
people get mad if you
get
park
into
in front
his
of their
driveway.
house
Yeah, they
and
do.
walk down the street to
Right.
somebody else's house.
It's not their
That's
house.
true.
And that's not their space, it's,
Yeah.
they think they
True, it's
own the
public- it's a
street
public
right out in
right-of-way.
front of their house.
That's
So-
true.
Well, maybe we should close the public hearing and then make some recommendations to Mike.
Okay.
So do I have a
I
motion?
will move to close the public hearing.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting's unanimous. So, I mean, we've had a lot of good discussion, a lot of good ideas. What recommendations do we want to make to Mike?
Just a couple of things I noted down. Occupancy, I'll discuss that with the building official. What are your thoughts on the 300-foot separation?
As hard as a home.
My biggest concern's a cul-de-sac. You know, just for the reasons this gentleman has told me.
I'll defer down to you, but I think the answer is it's really gonna be tough to tell with this homeowner you can and this homeowner you can't.
Well, we do that already.
Yeah, we
We
do
do
that
it with
in
our
ours.
R2 overlay zone. We say you can have a twin home, but you can't.
I don't have harbor like that.
I don't like that, but I don't like that. I know that Hurricane does that, because when I was shopping for an Airbnb, that was one of the considerations that you had to be aware of.
You don't want 3 houses in a row that all are Airbnbs.
Well,
That would make a mess of a neighborhood.
what I would prefer, for sure, they pull a permit and they get a business license, and then they're a problem. The first thing I'm gonna do, if I'm the next door neighbor, unless you tell me I can't, and then I wanna talk about it, is the first thing I'm gonna do is come get a business license the second they sell that property, so that whoever moves in doesn't just keep doing the same damn thing. And so, you know, in fact, I might come pull one tomorrow, just to,
I had the same thought.
with no intention of ever doing it.
I had the same, I had the same thought. Like, I'm gonna stake my claim
Yeah, I mean-
on my cul-de-sac tomorrow.
At
when
least
we
I
pass
know
this
I'm not
ordinance.
gonna be a problem, cause I ain't gonna really do it.
Yeah, maybe someday I do rent mine at an Airbnb. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So then.
But it does, it's
nobody
not
else
like
can
a
be
conditional use permit that goes with the property, cause if it did, I'd say no way, we shouldn't be
Just
giving
a business
anybody a business license that goes with the property.
Has to be renewed every year.
Yeah.
I mean, we can strike that out until we see a problem, but I am concerned about a cul-de-sac, but
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
And the one that I was talking about is on the cul-de-sac.
I think we may see a little more demand with the temple.
I
We
do
don't
too.
I
have
bet we do.
hospitality, we don't have lodging in Lindon. And so this would be an option for people that are coming into town for weddings, which a lot of my guests are coming into town for weddings.
Yeah. Weddings and BYU games and graduation and.
And funerals.
I want to say when I brought this to the council in 2020, I think we had 12. We've got 19,
Yeah.
3 years later,
It's
2.5
growing.
years later.
I like the business, I like them having a business license. I like the no street parking. I liked Rob's idea of possibly the number of residents tied to the square footage of the property. And also looking at whether they need to be related or unrelated. Those are my things.
I'm in support of a ordinance. I don't know if we're there yet, but I would tell you, whatever you come up with, sit down with the chief. Cause I don't wanna create a unenforceable,
Yeah.
cause he's gonna see it from a different perspective. I've written laws and I know.
And the ordinance is about a quarter of most short-term rental ordinances, and so.
I think the off-street parking really needs to be a function of how many people could be in there. 2 might be, yeah, it says a minimum of 2, I know, but if somebody wants to do 20 guests, they have to have It should state in the business, in the permit, this is how many, off-street parking you need, and you don't have it.
What that does is require the homeowner to have more off-street parking.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just saying, it should specify like how many occupants and how many, if you wanna do this occupant, you gotta have this amount of parking, and if you don't, then even though your house might be, you might be able to accommodate 20, you just don't have the off-street parking, so we've gotta drop down to 15. I'm just saying, I think that's, those two have to be tied together.
Okay.
There's that property for sale over on 400, that big 19 bedrooms. Could you imagine if somebody went in there and bought that place and turned it into an Airbnb?
Which one is that?
The one sitting on 400,
South of the pickleball courts.
yeah, just south of the pickleball courts, you see it?
Yeah.
It's for sale for 5.1 million right now.
They have the
It has
Driveways for
19,
parking.
yeah, they have all the room for parking, they got 19 bedrooms.
Right.
The fire department's gonna say, yeah, they could have 400 people in there, you know?
Then you can't, yeah, then you're like, family reunions, would that be, that's the
So
only one on here that I'm like.
if you have any other comments, why don't you email those to me? I'm not hearing one way or another about the 300-foot separation.
I'm saying no to that, but.
You're saying no. Do we want to limit to just a cul-de-sac? Do we,
Maybe something with cul-de-sacs.
okay?
Yeah,
Would
'cause
you be all right with that,
That would
Jared?
be a problem. Yeah, I'd be better with that myself, that it's just limited to cul-de-sacs.
One per
Yeah.
cul-de-sac or something.
Okay.
And I do like some kind of a limit on unrelated family members, just 'cause again, I hate to see that, maybe it wouldn't over here, but turn into student housing stuff, 'cause it's been a problem over in Vineyard, anywhere close to Utah to the college and stuff.
Yeah, there are a lot of people violating that, and it's tempting to do because nobody's enforcing it, and you could put 6 singles in there at $500 a
Yeah,
pop instead
and
of
it makes
4
it-
unrelateds or 3.
Yeah, it makes them pencil real good.
Yeah, it really does. But that's not short-term rental stuff. That's
No,
dealing
that's
with-
true, that's
that's
full-time
dealing
living.
with, the
Housing.
definition of a single-family home and who can live in that home. But yeah, that's being violated. As a personal practice, we try to adhere what the city has
Yeah.
for occupancy standards. Although it is tempting to fill it up with 6 singles.
So-
Have we given you some good
have,
feedback
yep.
on it then,
Yeah.
and that'll give you a bunch of stuff to work on,
Yes.
and then bring back to us?
Have you got
Okay.
feedback from council at all, whether they're interested in this issue?
I mean, they were in 2020. They told me to move forward on it.
Okay,
I
alright.
just didn't bring it because I wasn't receiving a whole
Feel
lot
like
of
it was that big
complaints.
of a
They
problem.
told me at that time, put some general requirements together and run it through the process. And so,
Okay.
so they didn't want to be too heavy-handed. I remember them saying, they just said, let's put some general, things, because we're not seeing a ton of complaints. But now that I am receiving complaints, I thought it's time to probably move it forward. So, yeah, let's continue
License
this.
is a good hammer.
Yeah.
Should I move to continue this then?
Right.
Okay.
You want to make a motion?
I move to continue ordinance 2023-17-0 to allow staff to make the changes recommended.
I second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, the next item on our agenda is also a public hearing. We've been doing a lot of those lately.
The last few,
Four more ready for you.
Hey, do we really have to open a public hearing with no public here? Are we on Zoom or anything?
Still need to open
We
up.
still
Because
have
we're on
to.
Zoom, or
No, we just process.
because Casper the Friendly Ghost might be sitting in the audience? I don't understand it, but anyway, go
It's
ahead.
just part of the process.
Because we noticed it as a public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Do I have a motion to open a public
I
hearing?
make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay. I'm just kidding.
He just wants to go home.
Okay, voting is unanimous. Okay, and our applicant's Lindon City, and the presenting staff is Mary Barnes.
We can make this the record of my quickest presentation yet. So essentially, we want to add this, what you read in your staff reports, to that single-family residential ordinance that we brought last time. It would simply be adding the, what is that acronym? AFPD to the residential land use category in the standard land use table, so that all of the residential permitted and conditional uses would apply to the AFPD. But that being said, it already does, because in the AFPD zone, it states that anything that's permitted in the R120, R112, or R3 zones is also permitted in the AFPD zone. So essentially, it's just adding that AFPD designation to the residential land use category, and then also because in the Anderson Farms area, there are apartments and condominiums, well, apartments allowed. I just added, instead of it just saying see chapter 17.46 R2 overlay, I added or 17.41 AFPD as well. I can go over it a little.
This is really
This is clarifying.
more of an ease for people when they look at our standard land use table.
If they, yeah.
For them to find where uses are located.
And so if someone wants to open a daycare, they can look at it and see, oh, it's conditional in the Anderson Farm Zone. And then they'll contact us, basically. But whereas right now, they'd look at it and they'd be like, I'm not represented here. I don't know where I am. And they'd have to go searching through the code for that one section that says that the permitted and conditional uses within the AFPD zone will be the same as the permitted and conditional uses for the R112, R120, and R3 zones. To represent that, we're just adding that acronym to the residential land use category, and then adding that into the single-family residential update that was recommended for approval last time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is there anybody here from the public who wants to talk?
I went looking for some people
Well,
out
we're
there.
closing. Well, I don't think we have much discussion on this. It's just a formality of adding this in.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Is there any additional discussion on this? I mean, to me, it's just to make sure that
It's just,
The
it's something we
Anderson
missed
Farms.
last time, that it's great, that we have this opportunity to just glob it onto that last single-family residential update, so we don't have to do one all by itself for something so small.
no, I think that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other discussion on it? Okay. We need a motion on that.
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend approval of ordinance amendment 2023-14-0 as presented.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Perfect.
opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, and Mike, do you have additional information to bring to the commission?
I was just gonna tell you, for the September 26th meeting, I won't be here. Mary and Brian will be here. But I just wanted to go through the three items that will, right now, that we have scheduled to come before you. Remember, I think we even discussed this last time, the Lucas Collier, who had divided that little lot on, what street is that?
100?
Yeah,
100
100 South. He wants to come for a conditional use permit for the duplex there, or twin home. We'll have a site plan approval for Lindon. It's called the Lindon Tilt Building, but right there behind, over by King's Camo. Sorry, this is really slow.
Down the business district?
Yeah,
It's just north of the
right here. Let me turn off that zoning layer.
They're adding another, I don't know, 40,000 square foot addition.
It's right here.
Into compliance with everything and an amended site plan.
Yeah, it's right here on 2800 west, just off 600 north.
I think you need to move it over.
Oh, thank you. This is, anyways, they're adding an addition to the building, so this keeps freezing up. And then the last thing, Brian has put together an ordinance, and all it's doing is just making our fines consistent with state law. So,
Or like nuisance violation, zoning, building, and floodplain violations. So it's 4 things.
so.
Why does Brian have to present that?
Well, we'll present it. He just wrote the ordinance.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought you said Brian was gonna present it.
No,
Brian will be here, just in case.
Okay.
For me.
Okay.
that's all I have.
All right, and I don't really have anything either. I just thought it was interesting, the developments on the Utah City
Yeah,
thing with Vineyard.
yeah.
Thought that's interesting and,
You got a huge anchor, Huntsman
Well-
Institute, that alone will help to make it
right.
viable.
And then they just announced the grocery store chain, the Lee's Marketplace.
Today or something, didn't they, or yesterday?
A couple of days ago, yeah. So you think that will go well for that area? I mean, it's massive. It's what, 700 acres or whatever?
It's just
And
kind
it's
of,
mixed use?
it's just kind of ironic that the
City.
first building
It'll grow on you.
to go in is the Huntsman Cancer Institute. On dirt.
On the old
that-
steel
on
plant.
dirt that, the guy that used to be the dean of anthropology at BYU told me he wouldn't even go watch a movie down at the Vineyard.
They put a
Well,
giant,
that's
really thick.
interesting, isn't it? That is really interesting.
All the
huh?
dark dirt.
We use
Oh,
part of the
that's really
treatment, Mike.
interesting.
Huh?
Extra radiation.
No, I don't
for the
really have
treatments.
anything else except the
Maybe
APA,
that
the
should just go out and suntan
APA
out.
conference
That's
coming
in
up.
October, I think
No, it's,
For 28th and 29th, is that right?
and the 29th is.
It's in Ogden.
Is a citizen,
Planner day. We can
Planning
send
day.
out, they have their draft
means us.
agenda. We can send it to you guys so you can see what sessions they'd be.
I think I sent it a couple weeks ago.
you
Oh,
did.
you did?
I did.
Yeah, you sent it, yeah, we should all have it. If anyone's interested in going, I am if I can.
If you're interested, let me know. We'll
Soon.
get,
That city.
I want to, but my daughter's
Vineyard
on
thing.
permission on the second, so
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, oh.
I might not
Okay.
get a possibility.
I don't have anything else.
The nucleus
Um,
of the.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I just have
Oh,
one
go ahead.
question real quick. Is there ordinance or whatever as far as how early construction can start?
Yeah.
I thought it was 7.
7:30?
Well, about 5:30 or 6, they're starting on Songbird Cove. That's when we start hearing hammers and trucks and,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is an ordinance.
so,
The temple work starts at 5:30.
It does.
yeah. So just, if there is,
No one
and
wants to complain about that.
gonna complain about that.
We'll
Nobody
reach
did
out.
say anything.
I don't know if, I mean, the
Be thought to be
Corbridges,
sacrilegious.
we've been
Can't
in
complain
very close
about
contact, but Alpine Homes, they're starting, I mean, they just final looking at their houses. So I wonder if it's mostly their
We
teams,
want it done
I don't know, maybe it's all of them.
it might be, I don't know. And there have been, since they've started, Alpine Homes has started, there's been a little more traffic on the road. Not tons, but there has been more. It's not, but the waking me up because my window's open at 5 in the morning or 5:30 or whatever when they start to
You
hammer.
can actually start construction anytime you want, as long as it's not noisy.
Yes, well,
Go ahead and read your plans all you want.
yeah, you can do whatever you want. You just can't create noise.
I'm making an excuse for the temple. They're inside now.
it does say, you can't, between the hours of 10:30 PM and 7 AM.
That's
It's
what I said,
regulated.
7.
Definitely before 7.
I know that last, I believe, Mike, let me know if I'm wrong, but last summer, the temple got some special permit or something to work
Of course.
at night because of the heat, specifically with the concrete.
Oh,
When they were
interesting.
doing the forms and everything, but
Nighttime pours.
So send notices out to every single resident within like 500 feet that they're doing an early morning pour or something. So we'll send an email to Alpine and talk to them.
Have they had any traction at all on the commercial down here at this, the commercial property in front of the apartments?
They have a bank that's looking at one of the lots. They are working on their plans. They, hopefully in the next month or two, they'll have those into us.
Good to see something happening there.
They don't dare say
Front of
Cove.
Cove. I mean, we sort of got burnt on that one, you know.
But still.
At least I feel we did.
Yeah. She told me she's,
Bank.
what's that?
Who is the bank?
Out
Out of curiosity.
we'll talk after, let's talk offline.
Okay. Well, didn't we,
Yeah, we adjourned.
we adjourned, so let's go home. Unless there's any.
Did we? Yeah.
I don't think we made a motion.
Yeah, Steve did, and I seconded it.
I thought we did.
That's,
Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate all your input and your insight and things you teach us.
you guys did a great job on the